Hi, another video where you just see my hands, and this is for the friends and other people who've asked about sharp knives and how to have sharp knives and keep them sharp. So this is the starting point Solomon's solution. So the first thing is to get a decent quality knife. It doesn't have to be expensive, and avoid doing silly things to get it too blunt. Then you don't have to sharpen it yourself if you don't want to or can't or are not comfortable. It's okay, take it to the knife sharpener. Just don't get it dull too quickly, and that is what I will discuss here. What kind of kitchen knives primarily are the optimal choice for most use cases, and first, how to not get your knives dull. So it starts from getting decent quality knives. I put links in the description of the video. I don't care if you use my affiliate links or not. This is the around $30 and it lasts for years, and it's no need to buy anything better than this. It's made of stainless steel, so for those occasions when you don't get to dry your knife quickly enough or wash it from whatever it is you were cutting, maybe some lemons or whatever, it will not have the rust destroying your cutting edge apex primarily or the rest of the knife. Also, I would not advise it, but you can also put something like this in a dishwashing machine and it will be okay. The handle is made to not take any soaking or anything, unlike wooden handles. For wooden handles, this was not taken care of properly, as you can see, and that's how things often end up in kitchens if you have jobs, kids and other stuff. Depending on your discipline and knowledge, so this is a lot simpler to use. As opposed to this is a lot cheaper, a few dollars, but it's poor quality steel that cannot take an edge when you're sharpening, and it cannot hold it for any amount of time, so it's not very good. So start with a good knife, and when you are using it, what works for me, this video is what worked for me. So wooden cutting boards of decent quality, and that does not get your knife edge dull, and it lets you cut food, of course. And of course, it's good idea to not leave it in the sink, because it will get warped and soak up all the moisture. It's best to wipe it off and wash it quickly right after use, and leave it somewhere to dry so that it's not soaking in the water. Of course, not in the dishwasher. It does require a bit of care, or you can cheaply just buy a new one from, I don't know what the translation for the word is. In my language it's bukva tree. The probably optimal choice for cutting boards. I'll put overlay text in the video for English term of that wood. But the sort of wood and anything pricey is not really that important. Just don't do silly stuff like leaving these in water for a long time and not washing them right away and cleaning them right away. So something like that. So don't cut on ceramic plates or anything like that. So if you have a good kitchen knife, and you decide to chop something on this, it's hard and it may get it dull right away. The same thing goes for washing it. If you put it to soak after washing it, to dry off, and lean it against your in the kitchen, if you have ceramic tiles on the wall, and lean it against that or hit it, you may shorten the period between sharpenings, because you will be dulling your blade. So put it in some plastic holder to just keep it until it's dry, or dry, wipe it off with a towel, and don't leave it soaked in water and for long, and don't use it on hard materials without a good reason. Also, avoid cutting plastics with it. Get some cheap knife that you don't care if it's dull or anything, for opening boxes, plastics or anything. And for cutting cheese, you should either get a dedicated cheese knife. It's also not super expensive, things like this. But if you don't do that, get some other cheap knife that you don't care about keeping super sharp for cutting cheese. Thinner and shallower blade is better for hard cheese, because things get stuck. See how blunt it is. I just did a silly thing, hit my hand with the blade, didn't cut myself. So cheese gets stuck to the side, so it's better to have less deep compared to this one for cheese. So those things, if you don't do them and you use this just for preparing food, vegetables, chopping meat or anything, it will last for a long time and stay sharp for a long time. Another important thing is storage. If you have a knife block like this, preferably made out of wood, then let me see if this is in camera shot. So yes, you can put it inside. I try to not have the blade sliding across the edge, but to keep the top back side of the blade sliding when I'm inserting it, and that's also how I take them out. I don't know if it's just superstition, but that's what I do. It makes sense to me, and it hasn't made my blades get dull too quickly. So just using these simple things, you can drastically prolong, yes, my kitchen is very dirty now, sorry, prolong the time between sharpenings and have your knife sharp for months before you need to resharpen it yourself or take it to a sharpener, maybe even 6 months, maybe a year, depending on how much cooking you do. Another thing when it comes to washing, again, don't throw this just in the sink to hit against metal. Don't throw it in the drawer to hit against other hard things and similar things. If you cannot place this, try to find some other place to hold it. If you have those magnetic holders, sure, put it with the back end and get it stuck to a magnet holder, whatever. Just avoid hitting the blade against hard stuff. When you're washing it, this is what I do. I start with the back of the blade and do something like this to not get, to not dull the edge or any side, so remove a lot of dirt. Then I do the sides with a sponge like this, and then when I am trying to wash this, I try to keep this cutting edge away from the sponge, if you can see. So just using the sides to wash it off and rinse it, and it gets pretty clean pretty quickly. To dry it, you can use a clean kitchen cloth that you wash it in 60 or even 90 degrees and just wash it. And if you have a place for keeping a clean cloth that is for wiping water off clean dishes, that's a good ecological and cheap way to do things. And of course many people like paper towels, but that's a matter of preference and budget and ecology and whatnot. So we have that. Also an important thing is like a cherry on the top of the cake is honing. You don't have to do that, but it can help if you are comfortable. This is a lot simpler than sharpening, and you are a lot less likely, at least in my experience, when trying to show people how to do things, they are a lot less likely to ruin the cutting edge by honing, even if it's not done perfectly, while if they are trying to sharpen it, then it does require some skill. Nothing to be afraid of, but some skill. So for honing, let me try to get this in the camera shot. Okay, something like that. So this is vertical. I'm not sure if camera distorts it, and the simpler, safest way for novices is to put your cutting wooden board down and place the honing rod on top of it, straight vertical. Keep your fingers away from this section, so behind the finger guard. And ceramic rods, I'll put a link to this particular in the video's description. This is relatively inexpensive, relatively, made by Sharpal. The steel rods are, depending on the type of knife you're using or whatnot, I prefer these and I would recommend these. These in theory remove some material. They don't just get the blade to be aligned, but in practice that's too little to make an important difference. The main purpose it does is to hone your edge. I have a video discussing the very basics of knife dulling and sharpening. I'll put a link to that video in this video description, so that would be blade sharpening 101 video. But there I discussed the basics of what this does, but and demonstrated it on like a scaled model, but here I will just show how to do it. So depending on how steep your cutting edge of the knife is, that's the only tricky part, that you need to try and catch with your eye to see when the cutting edge is aligned with the honing rod, and this does require maybe a separate video, and so this is not the most detailed now camera work or anything, but the basic principle is that you take the whole edge and slide it across the honing rod without too much pressure, but also without too little, and repeat the same thing on the opposite side. You can alternate those sides. If you're not sure about which angle to hold, you can use the hand guard as a sort of a guide, and for this knife it is about right. For some other knives it would be like this knife. For this knife this would be too steep of an angle, so something like this would be more appropriate. And if you go too shallow with your angle for honing, you will be doing nothing. If you go too steep, you will be creating a sort of a micro bevel on your cutting edge apex, and probably close to dulling your knife, but not as bad as using the stone at the wrong angle. But it's better to not do that, to be near the angle that your knife is sharpened at. And to figure that out, it's best to find some very flat surface like a super fine sharpening stone, or try to get it with some glasses and maybe some magnification against your honing rod to see when the very cutting edge of the knife is aligned with the honing rod, and the rest of the flat side will not be aligned. This cutting edge on kitchen knives is at a bit sharper angle. So that's basically what you can do to help. For example, after every use, if you wash your blade, it's not a bad idea to do some honing. At least that's been my experience. Your experience may differ, and there are some divided opinions about this, but this is what has worked for me so far. So that's basically it. Even without this, using just the tips that I gave you in the rest of this, the first section of this video, you can keep your knives sharp for quite a long time. Now, when it comes to knives, something like this covers a lot of stuff, and the good thing is that you can keep your hand and cut all the way to the board without having to move your hand to the end of the board, as you have to with, say, a knife that is small like this. So I cannot, I would have to get to the end of the table in order to get the blade to cut all the way. So different knives for different uses, but this is for your basic kitchen work, and some prefer knives that have a bit of a curve, some prefer those straight, but this length of about 20 centimeters and a bit deeper blade, so that you can use your fingers as a guide when you need to do some fast chopping, is the most universal. And if I had to buy only one knife, I would buy something like this. For a bit more finesse, my second choice would be, and is something like this. I will also try to put a link to this product. This is not super expensive, and it's this kind of knife has a name in English, and I'm not sure. I'll put some overlay text so for this one. And this other one is, I think, a boning knife, and it is used to do all sorts of finer work, and it's smaller blade, and it can replace this one to a degree, just like this one can replace this one to a degree. But as you can see, the difference in both the blade length and the thickness, and even the cutting edge angle. This one is not designed for very hard work, and this one is not designed for very fine work. So first choice and a good complement. But of course, if you only have a knife like this, or only a knife like this, you can make do. Even though the order of shopping for me and the recommendation would be first get this one, then get this one. Further on, the other knives that I would recommend is a good knife for bread, especially if you live in Serbia, where we eat a lot of bread. I will also put links to this product. This one is probably more expensive than these other two, But if you use it only for cutting bread and on wooden wooden boards, you may spend your lifetime without having to resharpen it. And I'm not exaggerating this, I mean literally. So a good quality bread for knife with a wavy edge can stay sharp, and the difference in cutting the fibers, I will refer to my blade sharpening video 101 again. So this one, the waves, they do a huge difference, and until you try it you don't believe it. But even the sharpest and the most expensive kitchen knife that has a straight edge is a lot weaker performing than a knife like this. If you eat a lot of cheese, then these that have cutouts so that they don't get stuck in hard cheese, and this pointy tip for taking it like a fork, and a bit wavy blade also, they go very smoothly through cheese, and they are not super expensive, but it's not a must. You can spend your life without ever using a knife for cheese. It's no big deal. The same goes for using sharp knives. People spend entire lifetimes without ever using sharp knives, but for me it's easier and more practical to use sharp knife. I would not argue that sharp knives are safer. Some people argue that, but I'm not sure. Most people are used to dull knives, and I've seen, I cannot say that I saw more injuries from dull knives than I saw from sharp ones. So I will not say that only sharp knife is, that a dull knife is a dangerous one. No, it's not. I think that's nonsense. And it's not a must to have sharp knives, but it's pretty easier and more convenient. And this way you can cheaply and relatively easily, even without sharpening yourself, get to use sharp knives for a long time, and just pay for sharpening maybe once a year. 6 months, maybe more realistic, especially if you do a lot of cooking. So for other knife advice, the other knives that you might use are something like these smaller ones that are used for peeling things and smaller work with vegetables. I think this is paring knife in English. You can get away with cheap ones. These are not bad enough for me to throw them away. They were about $1 each or something like that, and they cannot be sharpened very well, but they get the job done, if not ideal. And another nice thing is to have a serrated blade. So this one was not washed properly, obviously, but a serrated blade for doing vegetable things, and you can buy sets of these for relatively small amounts of money. I will also put a link in the description. They're good even for eating on your plate when you're having steaks or anything, but I am keeping this one away from ceramics and any other things, just for cutting on boards and everything, to keep it sharp. And I don't like sharpening these wavy things, but they stay sharp surprisingly long when you use them for what they are intended to. So this is for, in that case, for vegetables, and those steak knives and everything, yes, they will get a bit dull on the plates, but they stay sharp for a very long time. And this model is not super expensive, at least in Europe, at least when I find it on discounts and whatnot. So yes, that's about it. And for the silly stuff on metal and ceramics and everything, sometimes you need to do it. It's good to have a very cheap knife that you don't mind being dull for just those occasions. And this one is in a drawer and bounced against other knives, and it's doing its job, but it's not something that would cut very nicely. So that's the whole video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please use the BikeGremlin.net forum, and I'll see you in some other video. Cheers!